the burnout is real. It happens, and it usually strikes. You usually start to really feel it, in your mid to late 30s if you've been going for a while. But I'm curious, in your story, what was it that brought you to the DNA specific component, the genetic component?
So actually, burnout is one of the big ones, because I realized, so one thing that we've done very unique that most genetic sort of researchers don't do is we've studied the brain. Because the genetic industry has been focused on genes, like you said, SNP testing, right? Your report is, here's your list of genes, here's the SNPs, the variants or the spelling mistakes in them that may point to something. But that's not the way the human body works. It's not a bunch of, 22,000 genes is what we have. They're not independently working for one another. You can't look at each SNP and then make a sort of deterministic call. If you have this version of that's like looking at a car and saying your muffler is bad, but your engine is good, so you have a muffler problem. But that system is going to fail, right? Upstream, downstream, everything connects. So step one was that. We looked at these things in maps, but then going back to what pointed me to it was that brain map. So we looked at the neurochemicals of the brain, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, brain-derived neurotropic factor, and then COMP, the enzyme that clears these things out. And we've understood that it's not this gene means this gene, but there's systems and pathways that already exist. We needed to reverse engineer all of the genes per system, not one by one, and literally build maps. That's what really got me, was I figured out why I was so entrepreneurial, why my family was burdened with alcoholism and addiction and depression and even suicide, but why the same genetic suboptimability just led me in a different direction towards entrepreneurialism. What is that? So in the dopamine pathway, there's a gene called DRD2, which determines how much dopamine you bind, meaning, it's not about how much dopamine you produce, but you have these receptors in your brain that allow you to connect the dopamine and feel that reward or pleasure. It does one of two things, reward or pleasure, right? I have the least density. So the DRD2 gene determines that I have sparse receptors. So when that pleasure thing happens, I don't feel it very much. The second layer to that is, now that I've experienced that reward or pleasure, I have to get back to normal, right? So getting back to normal means breaking up that dopamine and getting it out of those receptors. There's a gene called MAO. I have the fastest version of that. So it very quickly chews it up. There's an enzyme called COMP, which then is responsible to clear up that chewed debris. I have the fastest version of that. So imagine that pathway. I don't feel, it's way down here. As I'm feeling, I'm already losing the experience, and that thing that I'm losing is being cleared out as it's being lost. I have three possible outcomes, which is what my family experienced. Depression, because I just don't get to enjoy or experience. Addiction, because I feed it by going down the path of pleasure. Or achievement, because I feed it by going down the path of reward and taking stupid, crazy risks that make no sense, like being an art dealer that all of a sudden sells DNA tests, right? Yeah. Because I just see the opportunities. I have to do this. This is too important. So that one thing is probably the biggest aha moment for me, where I went from, this is interesting, I feel better, to this is my life. Like, I have to focus on this, because the personalization, going back to your question, came from this. The personalization came from, this explains everything about me, right? And now I understand how I think, how I perceive, why I've done what I've done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.